Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5:30 to 6 p.m. session of the 2025 Open Simulator Community Conference. In this session, we are pleased to introduce the presentation History in OpenSim, Conquest and Tragedy. Our speaker is Andrew Wheelock. Spiff, and currently technology learning specialist for a small school in New York State. Past work as a teacher and technology integrator, he's given him 30 years of high school tech integration experiences with students and adults. Please check out the website found at conference.opensimulator.org for speaker bios, details of the session, and the full schedule of events. The session is being live streamed and recorded, so if you have questions or comments during the session, you may send tweets to at OpenSimCC with the hashtag pound OSCC25. Welcome, everyone. Let's begin the session.
Hello, everybody. Great to be with you tonight. I remember vividly when I fell in love with history. It was in seventh grade, and our social studies teacher, who was a lecture style, fire and brimstone philosopher, rolled out the reel to reel projector, which could only mean one thing: it was movie day. And we watched a black and white version of Stephen Crane's Red Badge of Courage, and I became mesmerized. Most war movies of the day were made of brave heroes unflinchingly courageous, charging towards the gunfire, certain of their indestructible powers. But the Red Badge of Courage forced me to think that just maybe, if I was ever in a battle, I too may let my fears override my feeble sense of courage. I might panic. Yet the character in the Red Badge of Courage rallies his courage. He lets it grow inside him and helps him realize that through his frailty there is also strength. Some may be born with it, and some must train it. And in that, the Red Badge of Courage made me confront a disturbing possibility. In the heat of battle, my own fears might overpower any nascent courage, leading to panic. However, the novel's protagonist ultimately rallies, allowing courage to blossom intrinsically. He discovers that even in frailty, strength can be found. Some are born with this strength, while others must cultivate it. I don't know if there's any people out there who've watched that movie. It's out there on YouTube. Feel free to look that up. So I'll carry on, and please forgive me if I go off a little bit of the script. I promise I will come back to it. So that was the key for my love of the study of history. That movie tethered me to the story by a compelling narrative of the fearful soldier who finds his courage and showcases when needed most, and showcases it when needed most. And after that, I explored history with a passion and vigor. And I started by reading Audie Murphy, who was the star of the Red Badge of Courage. And if you don't know his story, you should look it up. But I started to read Audie Murphy's biographical book, To Hell and Back. And I was so awed by his true bravery in World War II. So later, when I pursued my teaching career in elementary education, I knew that I wanted to bring my passion of history to students. In my early teaching days, I taught fourth and fifth grades, and I discovered that the narratives I started with, the stale textbooks, the black and white movies, didn't captivate my students, unlike me as a student. I heard all too often the phrase no teacher wants to hear, which is, social studies is boring. So my challenge was, how can I make history come alive for 21st century students? The obvious answer to me was technology. So, how can I use technology to effectively teach history? Using my own experience as a guide, I believe then and now that by letting students experience history through their own mind's eye, they will connect with it in a more authentic and deeper level. So, what was out there that had engaging history content for students? Well, in the early 90s, when I was teaching, there was only one place to find historical content for a new generation. That source, video games. Many early graphically intense video games involved historical content that dealt with early civilizations and empires to famous battles from the Gettysburg to D-Day. These early video games often provided accurate historical content as the gamer transitioned from level to level. Historical details were important to these early games. However, as an aside, later video games became more consumed with the narrative and less concerned with historical accuracy. And I believe an example of this is Assassin's Creed 3, that took a historical figure, Sir William Johnson, and turned his fame and accomplishments on their head to make him a villainous figure. They also featured a sidebar game whereby George Washington becomes a villainous king, and the goal of the level is to assassinate him. Well, in a free society, alternative interpretations of history are commonplace, but I feel the morality of a character assassination of historical figures who cannot defend themselves and who I believe are loosely cited is questionable, especially for those who revere accuracy and truth. So, fast forward a little bit in my story. Just make sure I'm sticking with it that's the problem. When I stick to a script, I lose track of where I am on my screen and everything else. So, here we go. Back now, thank you. So, after a time, after a 13-year teaching career, I became a job as a technology integrator at Erie One Bosse's, which is what's known as a shared service model, which is part of the public education system here in New York. And in this role, I was able to work with a variety of schools and try to develop projects for workshops to help teachers. So an idea began to emerge in my teacher's brain, which kind of sprung back to where I was as a student. And it was an innovative idea, an outside of the box idea, an idea that would take time, money, and just the right team to make it work. So I did what most of us in education with a big idea need to do. I wrote a grant. So the New York State Department of Education had what was known as a learning and technology grant that I applied for, and I eventually was awarded with it. And this grant gave me funding for teacher training and technology for the schools that were interested. We bought a server, downloaded OpenSim, engaged a team of Second Life builders, and created what is known as the Islands of Enlightenment. Let me just paste that link into chat. Within this 3-year grant, we put together 3 projects, which I must say I'm very proud of the work that was done here, not just from me, but from the whole team of people. So the first project that we did was the Understanding the Holocaust project. And again, this is all OpenSim. So this sim was developed with a recreation of the Anne Frank Secret Annex. The students were able to explore the themes from the book and became a museum curator to showcase their learning about the Holocaust using OpenSim building tools. Again, I'm going to give a little sidebar to the text here, but this was really kind of inspired by, if you're in Second Life, if you've ever seen the U.S. Memorial Holocaust sim that is still there in Second Life, I believe, as a legacy sim. It's well worth your time. And really, it was the inspiration for the Anne Frank build that we did here. And I think they did a great job. And I wish there was more sims like that. But so I'll come back to my prescribed words here. And the second project was known as the Heir of the King project. And this project explored medieval history using a gamified mystery where students leveled up to uncover who was the rightful heir to a fictional throne. This was developed with the help of teacher Mary Howard, in particular, who created a lot of the curriculum of this gamified learning structures. Just advance my slide so you can see that. So this slide shows you the Heir of the King. So you'll see we had a round table. Again, this was based off of an Arthurian legend similar to King Arthur. We had a castle. We had all kinds of leveled activities. And it really was one of the best kind of learning experiences I was part of. Again, the Anne Frank one was also there too. And I'll just go back to that slide for a minute. That's the Anne Frank side where we had a digital museum as well as a recreation of the annex. And I just want to add and make sure that this is important is that Anne's diary is ultimately the true source of inspiration for that. And the book is the key piece for students to read. I didn't want to think that that was left out, and we also actually kind of struggled to think about whether that was, we wanted to make sure that the kids understood that the Holocaust was a serious topic and not a game experience. And when we read the students' essays at the end of the unit, we definitely found that we struck that balance of making it an engaging learning experience, but also making it a powerful learning experience to understand the Holocaust. So again, I want to just, oh gosh, Lisa, I will definitely come back to that question. There was a lot of time went into it. Again, OpenSim is, we basically just used the built-in building tool. So again, I can dig more into that maybe if there's Q&A towards the end here, and I'll definitely leave some time for that. So the third project was called the Learning by Design project. And we kind of stumbled on this. And for those of you who've worked with OpenSim with students before, you probably know this to be true, is that after seeing our students' passion for building, our third projects focused on letting students create. And with the help from the Martin House, which is in Buffalo, it's Darwin Martin's house that was built by Frank Lloyd Wright. The students created their own Frank Lloyd Wright inspired builds. So it was just all of these projects were just, they were everything we wanted them to be. And I can talk about some of the challenges early on, but once we got them fully developed and figured out all the headaches and nuances of OpenSim and putting it on a server and doing all of our own work and building, like it was everything we wanted it to be. The students were really engaged and learning happened. But so let me walk you through some of that. And you can see in this slide, that's the Darwin Martin house in the bottom right-hand corner. It's a beautiful house. And if you're ever in Buffalo, New York, feel free to come and check out that house. It's beautiful. It really is an amazing build. So what did we learn from all of these projects? Well, what worked, I guess, is a key thing. That's an important model. And certainly as a grant project, we needed to know that. But first of all, we learned that student engagement increased. I no longer heard the term history is boring. And students were not only actively working within the project, we found that students were key helpers with their fellow students. So that was a conquest. The second thing we learned is that student retention and learning increased. Since this was grant funded, we had a grant reviewer that made sure the funds and the resources were put to good educational use. So we found, especially with the Holocaust project, that students had increased assessment scores from the past years using traditional practices. This was particularly rewarding since we wanted to make sure the students didn't feel that students didn't see the Holocaust as a game, but a historical event of tragic proportions. The assessments and writings of the students confirmed the learning the learning of the students confirmed that the learning was recognized, and that was another conquest. The third thing we learned is that there was increased teacher buy-in with technology. It was a big learning curve with OpenSim, and it required more attention to technology programs, which is another conquest that pushed teachers out of their comfort zone, which of course provided a challenge too, but let's just keep that as a conquest for the moment. The grant money started the project, but when it ran out, it became difficult to sustain. And that's kind of where the tragedy starts to set in. So it was a 3-year grant. And once that 3 years was done, I applied for the grant again. But, New York State, for, for whatever reason, decided to move on to other projects. And again, it's probably because there's only a limited amount of money and we've got to spread that money out. But anyways, so maintenance of avatars and student management was time intensive. So that was, I would say, kind of a tragedy. Okay. Make sure I got that. So the maintenance, and I'll talk a little bit more maybe in the Q&A about the maintenance of the avatars. And of course, the lack of administrative understanding and support prevented long-term success. So because admins leave busy lives and they don't often have the time to actually dig into a classroom and see what's going on and understand the technology, it was I don't think we got the support necessarily that we deserved. I'm kind of ad-libbing on that one, but of course that was a tragedy. So teaching history using virtual worlds has incredible promise and potential. And beyond history, there is potential for arts, architecture, literature, and science. The challenges are time, development, money for servers and virtual world maintenance, and support from state and local administrators who may not see the big picture. I'll talk about this one in a second. Um, and I guess I don't have a. Let me just talk briefly about the slide that's up here. So, Lear, if you can hold off on the text for a moment. So, one of the biggest challenges, I alluded to it, but it's kind of the maintenance of avatars. And this was actually a bigger one than we anticipated. So we all know OpenSim, and we all know OpenSim comes with a starter avatar that has, when it's without clothes, it has real world nipples. Let's just call it what it is. And that, of course, kind of freaks out people because you don't want kids going home and say, hey, someone saw my nipples today. So forgive the comedy of that, but it was actually quite serious. So, and again, what we did was we had to make sure that all the avatars that we created. So we made sure that they were, what's the old, cutout dolls, I guess. I know there's a better term for that, but yes, we had to make skins with undies. We did. And that's exactly what we did. But again, that was time intensive because that meant that we had to do that. We also had to make sure that all the realistic skins that were part of OpenSim, we had to make sure kids didn't have access to them. And again, we really didn't have a huge problem with that, but still, like when kids would log in sometimes in resin and they would be gray, someone gave me a shirt that said, I see gray people, which made me laugh. But the kids would yell, "Oh, I'm naked," which again is funny. But when, administrators walk by a classroom and a kid yells out, "Hey, I'm naked," that causes problems. So that was one of our early challenges. And, we had to work with the teachers and just talk to the kids about it. And again, that became pretty, pretty good. But the kids also just loved changing their avatars, which I think we all do, right? But like when we were trying to be in a historical simulation, we wanted to make sure the kids were appropriately dressed to that time period. And they do respect that per se, because most of them are gamers and they respect the game and they respect the role play of the game. But again, those were just some sidebar challenges. Yes, it is great immersion. Thanks, Beth. All right, so what are the recommendations based on my experiences? And I know many of you have kind of followed along with my experiences along the way and, have heard the successes, but maybe not so much the tragedies. I'm just going to go back here. My slideshow got a little bit out of order. Aha, there we go. Okay, so my recommendations and hope for the future. Ideally, I would love to see a commitment from private sector big tech entities, such as video gaming companies, to develop history simulations that are more focused on accuracy and truth rather than made up narratives. I would love to see, what Microsoft, I've got to give Microsoft credit here, what they did with Minecraft EDU, I thought was really fantastic. And so I would like to see a blend of Minecraft's creative sensibilities with gaming graphics. The ability to students to game and learn as well as a creative component for building and creation. So that to me is a conquest worth pursuing. So that's where I've kind of gone. And that's where I'd love to be, is to see, again, I know there's money, I know there's profits at the end of the day that have to be made. And maybe that's where all of this falls, is that gaming companies don't see a profit in the educational venue. But I would love to see, again, a Minecraft like offering that had high end graphics rather than the blocky graphics of Minecraft, and combined with educational components. Um, and again, I'm going off script here because I want to leave some time for some questions and to answer some of your questions that are in chat. But um, OpenSim is a great platform to do creation and building, but it is a challenging platform for a lot of just teachers. So in order to create things, it really takes a team of builders and server space and all that. So it would take a pretty large commitment again if we wanted to go the OpenSim route. But I think it's the learning that we saw and the magic that we saw from the kids, I think is really wonderful. And some of the sessions that I've seen already, and some of the sessions that I'm going to see watching the YouTube videos, I'm really looking forward to. It really did my heart good to see some of the topics, because I think there's some great work out there. And I'm hoping that we can spark a new generation of immersion, especially in terms of history, so we can keep building those conquests and minimize the tragedies.
Okay,
So,
Spiff, I don't know if you
yeah,
have an answer to this question, but
yes.
um, how much time modeling and how many lines of code are needed for these immersive simulations?
So I'm not a coder, so I didn't have to do a lot of that sort of thing. We did have, through the BOCES that I worked at. Again, this is kind of a public entity that helps schools. We did have to do some code with that, but OpenSim, because we basically used OpenSim. We had everything ready to go. And if you want to, and if scripting qualifies as coding, that probably there was some definitely dedicated time that needed to happen with scripting. But as you know, you can kind of copy paste the scripting, and for things like note card givers, uh, you know, door openers, some very quick things. And again, I'm assuming that's code on a sense, but that was mostly copy paste
Right,
code. So
that's
that wasn't
reusable
great. Yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you had another question from Stephen
Yes.
Zutfly who says, can this content be licensed to companies like FireSaber for them to be a vendor with tech support for schools? You might get more adoption when it is packaged with a company.
I agree, Stephen. And again, it's just that's a world I haven't been able to tap or really, dig into as a full-time teacher. And now I'm a tech director for a school. It's hard for me to, work those threads as as it stands. But yeah, I would definitely like to learn more. So maybe you can uh, send me some resources
That
on
sounds
that because
fantastic.
yeah.
Well, thank
Uh,
you, Andrew Wheelock, for an informative and an interesting presentation. As a reminder to our audience, please check out the conference.openseminar.org to see what is coming up next on the schedule. You won't want to miss our music event, which begins at 6 p.m. in the OSCC music region, and presentations will start up again here tomorrow at 7 a.m. Also, we encourage you to visit the OSCC 25 Poster Expo in the OSCC Expo 3 region to find accompanying information on presentations and explore the hypergrid resources in OSCC Expo 2 region, along with our sponsor and crowdfunder booths located throughout all of the OSCC Expo regions. Thank you again, Andrew, and to our audience.
Thank you, everyone.